Okay, we're here. We made it. Well, welcome everybody, whoever is out there, whoever is plugging in, watching this live stream tonight. You saw the thumbnail. I think this is going to be a pretty cool one. We have, tonight we're gonna process with somebody that actually is a dear friend and a colleague, and also just like I said on the thumbnail. This is one of those extraordinary fathers. And Luis, if you're there, buddy, you're one of those too. So we're going to have to, get you on here as well, and have all three of us at some point talking, because I consider both of you, including my guest, is one of those extraordinary dads. So welcome to Motivated Minds. This person I'm going to be talking about is a motivated mind. We help motivate each other, so he's a part of this crew. I hope everybody's going to feel more motivated after tonight's stream. I think you will be. I know I am whenever I process with our guest, because of what he's persevered through. And that's the point I want to get through tonight, okay, with everybody, is tune in to the perseverance. Listen for that. Listen to what it means to persevere through really difficult times, right? I talk a lot about a lot of turbulence on this channel. I use that language a lot because we all have turbulence. Some days we have less turbulence. Sometimes we were in that clean air and things are awesome that day when everything aligns, but there's always a little bit of turbulence. And then we hit those big days where there's a ton of turbulence. And sometimes those are seasons of turbulence, right? Where it's going on for a while. And we can feel hopeless and helpless and useless. It's hard to see any hope, right, when we're in that turbulence for so long. Well, that's what I want you to connect with today through this talk, is there is perseverance. We can be more resilient. We can regulate more effectively. And it's not just me who says this, by the way. I always use brain science to back me up. The brain says that we can do that. The brain says that we can be more resilient. It says that we can regulate more effectively when the big turbulence is here, right? So you know what? I have not seen my last big turbulence. I know it's coming. I had some medium turbulence earlier in the week that I had to work through, that I had to embrace and work through and navigate through, and I'm better for it today. And that's the beauty of being present in the midst of it and not avoiding it or running away from it, right? So listen to that today. In fact, Mr. Camera Junkie himself, when we talked, a few weeks ago, he talked a lot about perseverance, and that's what we're basically going to be connecting with about again today. So without further ado, let's get rocking.
I feel like
Chris Rob. Wait a minute.
See, wow. See, this feels very much like the Tonight Show. You have like the entry music as you're walking in and you kind of dance.
Listen, man, it's Novation, dude. It's not stopping. Hey, we're all standing up. Is everybody standing up? I hope everybody's standing up.
That's I'm not used to that. That's crazy. So I'm also not used to the extremely high bar that you set.
Hey, man,
setting up our talk.
I know,
but that's okay.
I know. You've actually told me before. I think in a way you've said I can make you uncomfortable sometimes with, putting you up there. But hey, I know you're the real deal, Chris. I mean, and by the way, this is Chris Rob, everybody. He has actually we do a podcast together, and I said, I've known Chris for several years. But man, when we thought about this is not a Father's Day, stream tonight. That's not what we're doing. This is, whenever I bring somebody on, it's a motivated mind. It's an extraordinary motivated mind that we can all gain from, we can all learn from. And that's why Chris is on with me tonight. So welcome, man. I'm so glad you're here, dude. You had a full day today.
I did have a full day. I am glad to be here. And one of the things we'll just jump right into some growth things that I had to grow in was
Uh-huh.
I struggled for years because of certain shame
Yeah.
accepting compliments. And so you are someone, when you
Mm.
recognize qualities in people, are very good about acknowledging that to someone and
Mm.
letting them know that you feel a certain way. And so you have over the years given me um wonderful positive feedback, praise and encouragement in the area of fatherhood,
Mm.
and it's taken me years to, even though I joke and say it made me a little uncomfortable, to be able to accept that and say thank you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's even something to
Mm-hmm.
grow in as well, that when someone actually
Right.
is giving you something that you may not feel inside that
Yeah.
you're that way, but if they see it in you, to be able to say thank you,
Yeah.
like that's a
To
big thing too.
receive it.
So
To
yeah, to
receive it.
receive it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about your dad stuff, you were doing dad stuff today.
I was, yeah. Yeah, I took my one of my middle children to a Dodger game today. He's in Little League, and it was Little League Day at the
Mm.
park where they get to go and they kind of celebrate all kind of those types of things, baseball
Yeah.
for youth, and they can walk the bases, which is super cool. So it's just a fun
Oh,
day. It was
so
perfect weather
cool.
here in Southern California, 70 degrees.
Yes.
It didn't get higher than 70. The little breeze, like that's
Yeah.
SoCal for you. For
Yeah.
those who are not in Southern California, like I do not envy. I'm not sure where Luis in Florida you are located, but I would
Yeah.
presume it's humid a lot, and we don't have
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, we have some other stuff, right? But yeah,
right.
today, what an incredible day.
It
So,
was a great afternoon. So it was just nice to be able to
yeah.
have that and spend some connecting time with one of my kids, and then getting to do this.
Yeah. Well, Chris, let's talk, man.
Sure.
I want to, when we spoke a month or so ago, and we thought about this, it was really about sharing some of your journey, with everyone, that I'm sure can relate to some degree, and what I said earlier, it's just our personal turbulence, our personal strife, our personal, challenges that aren't usually, I'm talking about the big ones. The reason I use that language all the time is because I hate to fly. So I love, that's why I use that turbulence all the time, because when it's big, I have to ground myself and I have to do something to ground myself. And you've had to ground yourself through your
Right.
own turbulence as a dad, right? Your own fatherhood journey, as by the way, our Luis has talked about as well. So share with us a little bit, Chris. Like I haven't even shared about the dynamics of your family and how many kids you
Sure.
have and
Yeah.
ages. But yeah, if you can share a little,
Totally.
little bit with us about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I definitely want to touch first on your word
Yeah.
turbulence. And the reason why that's word is so good, is why that metaphor is so good, is it when we hit that turbulence, to use that metaphor, it feels why we would call it that is because it feels like we're going to crash and burn.
That's
Like
right.
that's
That's
that
right.
fear that like wells up inside us, whether it's rational or irrational, doesn't matter. In that
Yeah.
moment, it feels like we're crashing. And so
Mm-hmm.
turbulence is a great word to use for it, to kind of put language to sometimes what we're feeling. And one of
Mm.
the things you and I have worked on over the years is all the things that we go through, how can we put language to what we're to those emotions and things.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I love when you use that. So yeah, a little bit about me. Been married. I should know this. Um, it's for 18 years. I do know this.
Okay.
Been married
Okay.
for 18 years,
Yeah.
and my wife and I have 5 children. And the order goes right as of right now: a 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old girl, 11-year-old twin boys, a 10-year-old girl, and a partridge in a pear tree. So that is that is the party line right there. Which we are
Piece of
in. We're in a
cake.
different season now, where things, of course, we still have our
Mm.
challenges, but
Mm-hmm.
we are in a season where um, our children are developing more of their independence, and so they are in certain areas less dependent on us than they were when they were little.
Mm.
Because that's where really a lot of that turbulence started for us, is when we had 5 under 5.
Yeah.
So the oldest was
Wow.
5, and then
Wow.
go all the way down,
Mm.
and had 4 of those 5 in diapers. Just things like that, where you
Mm.
just think of all of that early stages of parenthood, it was just
Yeah.
exponentially
Mm.
sometimes more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely part of it. We wanted three, and so when we were trying for the third, that's when the twins came along, and we thought,
Okay.
huh, okay, this will be an adventure. But we actually
Yeah.
we were kind of up for it.
Wow.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's see what
Yeah.
this can be. And number five then came along shortly after, and that really threw us for the that was the slamming on the brakes, going, wait a second,
Mm.
can we do this?
Wow.
God, what's going on here?
Mm.
Different things like that, where you're starting
Mm-hmm.
to question lots of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so thus began, in those early years, my turbulence, which, while being a father of five, was definitely a catalyst for a lot of the issues that I went
Mm-hmm.
through and that my wife
Mm-hmm.
and I went through and different things. It certainly was not the core issues. Those were things
Mm.
that were years and years in development inside
Right.
me that I had been struggling with from childhood, family of origin things, other stuff like that. That,
Yeah.
of course, were they added to that. I notice I'm blurry all of a sudden. Come on,
No, you're
focus.
good.
There we go.
You're good.
Focus back
Yep.
in. That kind of contributed to that.
Mm-hmm.
But so we are kind of on the other side of a lot of those things, and in much
Mm-hmm.
more healthier places
Yeah.
through the work we've done in groups, from being a part of some groups that have
Mm.
kind of a live in maybe a world, for those who would know 12 step, kind of live in some of that area there, recovery work, to us then doing recovery junkies together and many other things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of just a kind of an overview. I know you're gonna maybe ask some questions where we dive a little deeper,
Yep.
but yeah,
But that
that's a
helps.
little bit about me. Yeah,
That gives some context to, it's not one or two or three or four, it's five,
it is
and
five.
that's a whole other world, man.
And in some
Yeah,
instances, we say that once you pass three, it kind of
yeah,
is all the same. It really is at that point. There's kind of some ordered
yeah,
chaos.
yeah,
You start to learn to live with certain things. I
yeah.
joke, like, one of the, I I'm a neat freak. That
Mm,
was something that was instilled in me from
yeah.
my childhood and from my
Hmm.
parents. And that was something, as we had five children, that I had to let go. That the idea of a clean house, what I consider in my head a clean
Mm,
house,
mm,
will never happen in our
yeah,
house. I
yeah.
have to I have to get to a place where, what I would call picked up, if you
Yeah,
kind of like,
yeah.
we all know that phrase, when you kind of pick up the house
Mm-hmm.
a little, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
clean. That's as far as we can go. There's
Yeah,
just one example of things where you have to go, I have to be okay in this environment. And so I'm going to have to
yeah.
learn and adjust and adapt. So but
Well,
after three, it kind of feels sometimes the same.
here, let me get a couple of these in, Chris, before we go. So I would just want to say hello
Yes. Hi, Mr.
to,
Camera Junkie. Hi, Meg.
yep, yep. So there
Yep.
he is, Yep, Luis is saying hi to you.
Uh,
And by the way, yes, it's Miami.
Miami.
Yeah, and of course, this is the one right here.
Yep. Yeah, I know. What we really should have done was
Sly.
invested
Sly
in
is
diaper,
good.
like, stock when they
Yeah.
were,
Yeah,
and
right,
that would have been
right.
like their college fund,
Yeah.
stock and Pampers or something like
Yep.
that. Because yes, that is approaching in the next few
Yeah.
years, as we
Yeah.
we know too well.
Wow. Sly knows what's happening. So, I want all of you to think about this, because here's the thing. I don't we didn't have kids. My wife and I, we got married a little later, and we decided at some point we hit a crossroads, and we made some real calculated decisions, and we had to, either way, we were going to have to sacrifice some things. We chose to go the way that we are. We chose not to have kids and pour ourselves into the things that we're doing, which are really about helping others. But here's the thing. I don't understand what it is like, Chris, to, I don't understand the challenges of having a child, although I have a dog, and I think that counts for a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, but not much. I don't have to send my dog to college. But but it's that stuff I don't totally understand. But what I do understand and what I do relate to, and I want everybody to connect with this, any of you who are watching right now, I want you to connect with this. Chris, you project some stuff onto your kids You just said a minute ago from your family of origin, from your childhood, right? And I'm sure everybody
Yeah.
here who's watching or who's going to watch this is going to relate to how they project some of their old stuff, how they project some of their childhood stuff onto others, either onto their partner or onto their kids. I do. I project some of that onto my wife sometimes. And that's that's stuff that we've got to work through. If we want to actually grow, we have to work through that stuff. If we just avoid it, it's going to keep coming up over and over again. So I'm wondering, even if anybody in the chat, if any of you can relate to this, put in the chat, like, what do you think you project onto others? What is it? What is the childhood thing that you think you project? And we're not talking about the good projection. We're actually talking about the, projecting maybe some things that you learned as a child or that you were modeled as a child. That tends to create some issues, right? For me, I think, I will project, my mother's, let's say, her codependency, because I was really close to mom. So sometimes I will project some insecurity that I grew up learning from her, and sometimes that insecurity will cause some turbulence, right? I happen to do that a lot with my wife. So I would imagine with kids, if I had kids, I'd probably be projecting a little bit of that stuff onto them too. And so I'm wondering for you, what do you think some of those things have been for you, Chris, that you've had to deal with, and that you continue to have to deal with, but, things that you've grown in?
Sure. One of them would be in an air of perfectionism, or maybe
Okay.
it's not. I wouldn't. No, maybe I wouldn't say perfectionism, but we have to portray a certain way of being towards others. Whether it was for our family that we have to look and sound and behave a certain way, like let's say at church, you behave a certain way, and even if that way may not match at home, when you're out with others, this is how we're supposed to look.
Okay.
So that was something that I'm trying to think if
So was there a little bit of image management there? Was there a little
Yeah.
bit
Oh,
of?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Totally.
and then I grew into needing to continue that way of behaving, because when I did and other people would comment on it to my parents, well, then they gave me validation, like, of how good Chris was.
Okay.
So then it's like, okay, well, I have to,
Yeah.
now it's becoming performance based. So I have to perform a certain way. When I do, then I get rewarded
Right.
in affirmation. So that definitely.
That's a powerful reward, right? It really is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That,
And it's good. It's healthy until we start, going after it, right? Until we start seeking it. If we get enough of it as a child, if it isn't performance based, Chris, right? That's what I'm saying. Some of us who've grown up with that, excuse me, in that validation through performance. If we didn't get that same sense of validation when we failed at something, right? That's when, unfortunately, it can start turning into, something more unhealthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay.
So that's one. Another one that was brought up from my family of origin was we hide kind of things. Anything that's going on, we don't let anyone know the problems. So even us. And so I talk about how even at one point, I've shared this in our groups, that when I was 6 years old, my mom was really sick and spent 9 months in the hospital.
Wow.
And I didn't find out till I was 18, through having to prod and push, what really was the reason that my mom was so sick in the hospital, because we don't talk about those things. And in their intent to protect me as a 6-year-old, to not frighten me, we developed this pattern in our family that we don't share. We don't talk about things of importance to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I I struggled with, to where in some of my
Mm-hmm.
issues in my marriage, I got really good at, if there's something I didn't want that I didn't want someone to know about, I got really
Mm-hmm.
good at hiding.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um so
Mm.
that kind of developed. Now that's not necessarily with parenting, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Although it makes me very attuned to, if my kids are not being truthful to me and hiding something, I almost want to now
Mm.
like that out
Yep.
in a certain way.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
those are kind of some ways where it is kind of
Mm-hmm.
infiltrated my parenting. And I think just with a big one that lots of people, when they become parents, get frustrated with, is the thing that you did not like about how you were parented, that you swore
Right.
that you would
Okay.
never do when you
Right.
became a parent, and lo and behold, what happens? You
Mm.
do it, because it's ingrained into you
Yeah, it is.
from that upbringing, to where
Right.
it is second nature whether you realize it or not. And you
Yep.
get into those situations where you're
Yep.
so frustrated that, I can't believe
Mm.
just like my mom did to me, I'm doing this
Yeah.
now to my son, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. And there's a whole laundry list of those,
Yep.
but I think that's where a lot of that shame came in for me
Mm-hmm.
once I became a parent, was the things that I didn't like, that for years I said, I'm never doing this when I'm going to
Mm.
become a parent. And then you find yourself doing, or the things that you thought you'd never be bothered by.
Yep.
Like, I can't
Yep.
believe my mom, for me, the thing was, she hated, I always needed a haircut. Always needed a haircut,
Mm.
or my hair looked stupid, or it was too long, or it was too
Mm-hmm.
short. Like, that was a thing through middle school and high school.
Right.
And now I do that with one of my kids, and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I think he's got this
Yeah.
stupid haircut that I don't
Yeah.
like. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm my mother.
There you go. See, it's isn't it wild that we do that? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, it's and also like what you're talking about, Chris. And again, some of you in the chat may relate to this, but we all mostly made vows as a child. At some point, we made a vow that I will
Mhm.
never be this way,
Yeah.
or I will never let myself be hurt this way, or I will never let myself, be manipulated this way, or I will never let somebody make me angry this way or hurt me this way. And that's the biggest vow that we usually make as children. If there's any
Yeah.
dysfunction, I will never let anybody hurt me, again, whether it's something that we see happening to someone else, but that's usually the way it goes. So what you're saying is so interesting. Now we're going to get into this in a second, because there is a really big deal, a major turbulent event for you, that your family's had to endure, that you've had to really step up even more your fatherhood game
Yep.
with one of your children. So we're going to get into
Right.
that. Everybody, hang on. If you're here, stay on, because we're going to kind of go into the deeper end of the pool in a few minutes. But Chris, this is something I'm curious. So, you can you think of something that you might project onto your kids that you might, you just said one of them. Is there anything else that you can think of that you might project onto your kids that you feel guilty or shameful about, that you need, and then how do you deal with that?
Sure. A big one is, I don't allow them to make mistakes.
Okay.
And what I mean by that
Mm.
is, it's not that we all make mistakes. I'm not talking about the big things where they can be life-changing, but
Mm-hmm.
as they're growing and learning things, on a scale of 1 to 10, I make something they did that was a 3, I make it an 8. And I will
Mm.
use guilt and shame of, why did you do this? I mean, from something as simple as when they were little, that they would spill their glass of milk, and over again, to where it's one thing where you can be frustrated at what's going on with your children, but it's another to go and say, well, I guess I'm going to have to give you a sippy cup, just like when you were a toddler, because obviously you can't
Mm.
handle a glass of milk. Those are
Right.
two different scenarios there,
Mm-hmm.
when you're starting to make statements like that to a child who is older and trying to develop. um, and you're treating them again and giving them shame for making mistakes. And that's one of many things where I have to work on, I've had to work on over those years, to give them that grace and understanding that they are still growing and learning. And my job is to support in certain ways. And instead of maybe the criticism, the reframing, we talk about reframing in our recovery groups a
Right.
lot. In that
Right.
statement, in that scenario, would be from the frustration saying, Sawyer, that's one that struggled with it. Sawyer, it seems like we're having some trouble lately where we're spilling our drinks a lot. How can I help you to not do that? How can I help versus why do you always do this? There's the
Yeah.
criticism versus the
Right.
question on how we can partner
Yes.
together to maybe
Yeah.
mitigate this situation so it doesn't
Yeah.
happen again or happens
Yeah.
less frequently. You
Yes.
know, it's always about some of those things, but usually it's always the jab and the criticism for me first as my first knee-jerk reaction. And so that's a struggle to where over the years, one of the things I've had to do is I've had to apologize to my children, and some people think that that's kind of radical, but to where I can come
Yeah.
up to them and either get down on their level literally, where maybe I might be on my knees face to face,
Yeah.
and say, son, there's this thing you did, and dad just blew it way out of proportion. And I'm really sorry that, I did that. And maybe I will even give them a little backstory of, I had a really tough day at work, and so I lashed out, and that was wrong of me. And so I'm really sorry, and I hope you can forgive me. And I hope you understand that dads aren't perfect either, and that dads make mistakes too. And so letting them know that just like they made a mistake, I made a mistake, and it's okay that we
Yeah.
make mistakes as long as we have forgiveness and understanding within each other, and to be able to model that as well. That's something that you've shared with me that is really important. We've used the phrase "give them a way back home." That what I'm trying to
Right.
tell them is
Right.
that even dads screw up. And so what
Yeah.
I'm doing right now is we call it taking ownership. I'm taking ownership of the wrong I did, as opposed to just saying, I'm your father and you just listen to me and obey regardless. Well, sometimes dad's a jerk. And so I might actually have to say that. And I've said that now as I get older, gosh, dad was really a jerk as he was snapping at everyone at dinner time. Like, I'm really
Yeah.
sorry about that. You
Yeah.
guys, I hope you guys can forgive me for my behavior, and I'm trying to do better the rest of the day. Something like that, where you let them know it's okay to make mistakes as long as you try to reconcile with the other party. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot, Chris. And I know through knowing you and being close to your story for years, you've shared with me your experiences. We've connected and you've talked to me and you said, this is how this is what I had to deal with today, and this is the ownership I had to take today, with one of my kids, and this is how I did it. And that's just always impressed me. That's not even the right word to use. It's been really inspiring to me. Like, we can communicate more effectively if we are intentional. We don't
Yes.
have to be at the mercy of criticism. We don't have to be at the mercy of reacting, through that. And, criticism, stonewalling, these are some of the things that we do when we react, and they don't work.
Yeah.
If you do them once in a while, that's okay. That's what you were saying. Look, you can have a crash and burn day. The problem is when these things become, like, for instance, my mother, who was depressed for most of her life, that affected me because that was consistent. That was her mode of operation, right? And so she didn't just have a crash and burn day. It was kind of there was a lot of that. But what you're talking about is how you can come out of the nosedive. And I just thought of something real quick, Chris. I thought of, like, even Sly, I'm going to put up your comment here in a second, but I thought, is there a 12-step group for recovering parents? There should be like a Recovering Parents Anonymous. It's like, parent, you guys go through so much, and, you'll do anything for your kids. You love your kids, and yet at times they can be a massive, massive challenge, and man, there should be something like that, a support group for parents,
even thinking about, I mean, as we were becoming new parents, my wife and I, you read parenting books and things, and I always
Right.
feel like,
Right.
and maybe I missed this, and I just could be off in my assumption right now, but it feels like they teach you how to do things, but they don't teach you what to do when you make a mistake.
Well,
So
here's what Sly is saying about that. Most of us
yes,
we're taught parenting
but we're
101.
modeled,
Yeah,
right?
from our parents, And those with creative minds came up with their own lesson plans, right? And if you end up with socially responsible adults, you were a success. That's the way it was, right?
Yeah.
And man, it's what I find today, by the way, working with new parents, especially, I have tons and tons of, especially during the pandemic. I think I have seven couples that had their first child, and helping them navigate through that. There were just so many tools today, that if you want to use, and you can even overdose on those tools too. That's the dark side, right? You can just, those first-time parents can get so locked in and hyper vigilant around being the best parent they can be, and there's an unhealthy side of that too. Like you need to learn how to separate well. And I always say, I think I know, Chris, some of the challenges that I would face. There's no question. My wife and I sometimes talk about this.
Ooh, I want to know. Yeah. Tell me.
Here's what I am almost absolutely positive that if we had a child or children, this is some of my stuff I know that I would struggle with, because I struggle with this with my dog. Okay.
That's what I was about to say. I was actually,
Yes.
let me add a quick addendum to it. Is it specific to a certain gender, or any if you had a little girl or as a boy? Or
I
doesn't
think
matter?
this would be.
'Cause
I think. Yeah, I don't think this would matter. I think it would be more
Okay.
challenging with a girl, though, Chris. Yes, I do. But I do think this is my issue, though. I grew up with an attachment issue. Okay, and some of you in the chat may understand this. I grew up with an attachment disorder called anxious attachment. I'm more on that side. Anxious attachment and it's just what it means. Anxiously attached. There's some anxiousness in attaching to people. So I was never just really comfortable in attaching to people. There was anxiousness attached to it. And this is one of the things that I have with my dog. My attachment issues come out with my dog, and this is what it looks like. And I know this would play out if I had kids. I'm serious. I would have to work through this. And that is, like, first of all, when I didn't socialize my dog very well. I wanted to protect her. I protected her. Early on, I protected her for too much, and I didn't socialize her well. So when I realized I needed to, what did I do? I took her, to a doggy daycare. But the doggy daycare I took her to was very specific. I needed to make
They
sure
enabled you. They enabled you.
I needed to make sure that they had a webcam that I could watch my dog at all times.
I remember
Even when I was with a client, I would, at some point, I'd be able to look down at my iPad and see that webcam and make sure my dog was okay.
I remember we were at Lovebirds, our favorite coffee place.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
always funny that you and I go to Lovebirds, and you pull out your phone, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "I'm checking on my dog." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Oh yeah, we took her to daycare, and they give you access to a webcam." I'm like, "Oh gosh."
And it was it was the greatest thing. Oh, but it wasn't the greatest thing for me. I mean, this is literally what I had to do. I remember taking my dog. The first day I took her to doggy daycare, I let her go. It was very difficult for me to let her go because she looked at me with those big eyes and that little sad look. And she's like, "Where are you going?" And I let her go, and I stood there to watch her. And, the staff came over to me. The staff person came over to say, "Look, Carlos, Mr. Martinez, we need you to leave." And I said, "I'll leave." And no. And she said, "No, you have to go because she's not going to get comfortable in here if you're still here." And I said, okay. So I left. But what I did was I circled back around the aisle, and I came back and looked above through the little aisle, and I was watching her so she couldn't see me. And the staff person came back over and said, Mr. Martinez, she knows you're here. She still knows get out. You need to get out, and they pushed me out so I could let my dog, separate. I had to separate from her, and she had to separate from me. We both had an enmeshed relationship, basically, right?
They have a name for
And
that in parenting. You know what it's called, right?
what?
The helicopter parent.
Yes,
They
I was
hover. They
helicopter
hover.
all over my dog.
Yeah,
So I really, really struggle. And so my dog, here's the issue. Some of you may, with dogs, maybe you did this a little bit. My dog is not the most socially, considerate dog. She can take little bites. Okay, she's not the most comfortable around people and other dogs. And that's me. That's me. And I feel so bad, that, but I can see I projected some of that onto her. And it's so weird. I projected some of my family stuff onto my dog. Is that crazy? So I'm sure I would be doing that with children too, if I had children. So I can relate a little bit, Chris, to what you're talking about.
sure.
Here, let me get a couple of our comments in, Chris, because I want to just say hello to our friend Peter
That's
Gregg.
what I do too. I wanted to
He's
say hi to
here.
Peter Gregg.
The man.
Yes.
Yes. And I wonder who he's talking. Peter, who are you talking about here? Give us the answer, because I think I know who you're talking about. In fact, I think you followed up with this. Who was the first parent to ever fail? I think I know where Peter's going with this. And then he says, and yes, the dog, yes, exactly.
It's just like your own kid. Yep.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. True. It's so incredible how much we, and he meant it's just like on there. Here's my wife, by the way. Isn't that cool that she's in here? My dog sees me as a dog, no respect at all. And it's so true, you guys, because she's not the alpha, so my dog isn't the most, she doesn't really have a lot of respect for my wife, unfortunately, so I groom my dog. I do everything. My dog would not allow my wife.
She has not been barking during the live stream, so something's going on where she's behaving.
Yep, exactly. And then the last thing Peter says, they constantly test boundaries, right? They do. Plus, you're right. They think they own you, but the beauty of it is they have unconditional love towards us and have no walls. Right? They're so amazing. I mean, my dog is therapy for me. She really is. So, and she senses when I'm down, right? And you have a dog, Chris, maybe, but when I'm down, that dog, she sniffs the sadness out of me. She can sniff it. She's one of those dogs, and most dogs are like that, right? They can sense that you're shifted and that you're sad and something's going on, and they come up to you and they get close to you. Oh, I just love that. So, Chris, I want to make sure that we're not going too long tonight, but I want to get into some of the bigger turbulence, that you've really faced over the last few years, that you've had to really work through and push through. And I would imagine too, this has affected your marriage. This has affected the whole family.
Yeah.
Right. So
absolutely.
Can you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, I'll actually start. I'll back it up.
Okay.
That I struggled in those early years of parenting primarily because I did not come from a big family. I have one older sister who's 9 years older than me. So by the time I was moving into kind of those formative years where you're pre-teens into teens, at that point she got married and moved out of the house. So I have kind of like these two halves of my childhood where I had a sibling, but she was older than me, so we didn't really have that kind of like playing bond connection that maybe some closer in age siblings would have.
Yeah.
She's older now. We got along really well because there was nothing to fight about when you're not sharing a lot of the same stuff, not the same gender, as well as she was in high school when I was younger, things like that. But then the later years, then it was like I was an only child. So kind of had this dual world of two different childhoods where did not come from that big family. So when we started building up our family, my wife came from a family of three children. She has two brothers. So was used to a little bit of a bigger household, as well as she has a gigantic extended family, which my family was not so much. So I kind of had the scales were a little off as we were in those early years of marriage, where small family on my side, ginormous family on her side.
Right.
Naturally, we start having kids. I'm feeling the squeeze where she is very comfortable in an environment with lots of children. I am not. So in those early years, I really struggled with shame that I am just not a good dad. And part of it was that my wife is so good at it. so
Mm-hmm.
good at it
Yeah.
that the false narrative that I adopted based on previous shame that I had had was that means that I'm a bad parent. She's so
Mm.
good, ergo I'm so bad. And it
Wow.
really wasn't
Yeah.
that. It's that
Yeah.
I'm so insecure in my skills, and they may not be as seasoned as hers, that
Mm.
she so surpassed me that it really looked like she's, playing professional ball and I'm the amateur.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
through no
Right.
fault of her own, which I developed lots of resentment for that, amongst other things that we struggled with, to where um, about 5 or 6 years into our marriage, we were really at a crossroads where we weren't sure if we were gonna, we were gonna make it. Um,
Yeah.
Big turbulence there where we were
Mm.
needing therapy. I had moved out at one point, just kind of really at that those dark moments,
Mm.
which thankfully we were able to work through the deeper issues we had, including some things regarding parenting through some of those years, which really for us felt like prepared us for our ultimate, at least on our end, bigger for us because it's much more long term turbulence,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was when our youngest child, our daughter, Cece, was
Mm.
5. She developed epilepsy. So this
Mm-hmm.
wasn't something she was born with.
Right.
She developed, I guess you'd call it normally, for those first 5 years of her life. Woke up. She one in the middle of the night. One night, she came into our bed, as young children sometimes do, to kind of sleep between
Mm.
us, and I felt like someone was elbowing me to wake up. And so when I wake up, I look and she's having a full blown seizure, grand mal
Yeah.
seizure.
Yeah.
So at that point, we went
Wow.
and kind of got her checked out and did, a myriad of tests. And it turned out that at that time that she had just basic, whatever basic means, childhood epilepsy, something that is common and
Mm-hmm.
can be treated with medication, and something she would grow out of by late adolescence. So kind of late teens, mid to
Mm-hmm.
late teens for a girl. And then it would just simply be that. Well, not only was that not the case, medications didn't work, and she increased in seizures and intensity to where about 8 months into that process, not only was she having seizures on the daily, but pretty much every 5 to 10 minutes. At the time, my job, which was gracious to do so, I was able to take a leave. I became her caregiver at home.
Wow.
And we had to do
Yeah.
more tests to where we found out she had a very rare condition of epilepsy
Mm.
that has a whole bunch of symptoms, one being aphasia. Aphasia is the inability to process thought into speech. And most of the time, we see this with stroke victims. After they have a
Mm-hmm.
stroke, they start
Okay.
to slur and they can't talk. That's what happened to her. Over the span of 7 months, she went from a fully functioning 5-year-old that could speak and have conversations with you to
Mm-hmm.
couldn't talk at all. And so that
Wow.
put us to basically our lowest point. And we had to
Yeah.
use the tools that we learned in
Mm-hmm.
counseling and in
Mm-hmm.
recovery to get
Yeah.
us through these dark moments where parenting changed at that point.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and Luis, when I heard you interview him a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
resonated with a lot of what he said.
Yeah.
With one caveat that was different for us, is that we also have these 4 other children in the home that
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
trying to now balance, kind
Wow.
of give equal weight as much as you can to your children, except that we
Mm-hmm.
can't. That's the reality, is that we had to come to a kind of a crossroads where, even talking with them, that
Mm.
there'll be times where Cece needs more of our attention because we're doing hospital treatments for days and weeks at a time, or because if she has a seizure at school, it's, you got to pull her out, or
Mm-hmm.
or we were planning to go somewhere. There'll be times where we might be going in the summertime to a local water park, and if she has a seizure and she's down for the count for the day, that's it for the rest of the day. So now my
Mm-hmm.
other children are developing disappointment, feeling abandonment issues with their parents. I mean, so now we're going into, like you said, the deeper waters where we're having
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
navigate a whole new set of parenting. There's
Right.
the parenting where you feel like you're messing up and doing missteps, and then when you
Mm.
start to feel like, well, I'm working through things, and I'm progress not perfection. I'm doing things a
Mm-hmm.
day at a time. Well, now I've got this whole other issue that I don't know if my child will ever speak again. I don't know if
Wow.
she'll you
Yeah.
start to have to like abandon dreams. Will she get
Mm-hmm.
married? Will she go to college? Will she
Mm.
drive? You have to start letting go of your expectations of
Wow.
what you want as a parent for your children,
Mm-hmm.
particularly this one with special needs. And time is finite, and there is not enough time to give equal weight to all five children, especially when
Mm-hmm.
this one's having seizures on the daily. And so that was kind of a big that was our big life changing event in 2015
Yeah.
2000 yeah 16 sorry
16.
2016. So
Right. Right.
I'll stop there if you wanted any follow-up questions or anything
Well,
before going
yeah.
into it.
I mean, that's the deeper end of the pool right there, Chris. I mean,
Right.
you and similar again to Luis, you guys um, have really needed to deal with, these harsh realities, right?
Yeah.
And what really stands out to me is the way that you both have embraced it. You've instead of running or even medicating, somehow, some way, the pain of that reality, right? Because it's not your ideal reality, obviously. And what I heard you say, and I've heard you say this before, this is what is really does hit me at a deeper level. It's the thoughts of, it's the future thinking, it's the uncertainty, it's not knowing,
Yeah.
it's that. I mean, there's no wonder there's a whole therapy around uncertainty. There's a whole therapeutic modality that is actually used to treat uncertainty, because uncertainty can drive you crazy. I mean, it can make us lose it, right? I mean, we can fall into deep depression, anxiety with uncertainty if it's too much and it's too deep and it goes on for too long, especially when it's around our health or someone else's health that we love, And so how have you, Chris, as a dad, how have you been able to push through this? What does your perseverance look like? How have you moved through those thoughts? How have you moved through that uncertainty? What has that been for you?
Sure. One of the first things we developed, and this ties in with what I talked about earlier, where I came from a family of of hiding, no being honest about a lot of the tough situations that were going on within our family. Particularly,
Mm,
I mentioned my mom being in the hospital for 9 months. And by the way, that scenario, how
yeah.
that looked was
Mm,
that my older sister, who was in high school, would pick me up from school. We'd come home. My dad would come home from work, make dinner for us, and then head
mm,
off to the hospital. And I wouldn't see him. And my sister put me to bed, and then I wouldn't
mm,
see him till the next morning. And that was the routine for months at a time.
mm-hmm,
Um, so all of a sudden, my wife and I find ourselves in the hospital with our daughter,
mm-hmm,
and what was supposed to be, maybe a few days of tests turned into, we're going to be here for 2 to 3 weeks.
mm,
But we have these other kids at home who, thankfully, and we have a great extended family.
mm-hmm.
Both my in-laws and my parents are local to us, and so supporting us in this way.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's
we
big.
have these children at home that are still going, where's mom and dad?
Mm-hmm,
And so we made the conscious decision to say, all right, we need to include them into what's going on with
mm-hmm,
what's appropriate
mm-hmm.
that they can handle at their age level. So are we going to go into all the detail? Of course not, because first of all, some things they can't understand.
Right, right.
Some things, even if we tried to share, might um, frighten them or cause
Yeah.
unnecessary worry. But they know that their sister's not here,
Mm-hmm.
so we have to talk about something and give them at least a picture of what's going on. And normalize the fear. So that's really what was our kind of our attack, was we need to kind of normalize that Cece has a condition, and this is something that's going to be lifelong. And so here are some things that we can do. We first talked about her seizures, that when you play with her, they knew enough at that point. We said, you know what the seizure looks like, right? Tell mom and dad what it looks like when Cece's having a seizure. And then they start describing the symptoms. We say, great. So you know what it looks like. So here's what you can do when she has a seizure. because we don't want her to fall or we don't want her to bump into things and hit her head. Just go ahead and put your arm around her and just hold her still. Don't get up in her face, because what's happening medically or scientifically in a seizure is the brain is turned off. It's like your computer was just unplugged and plugged back in, and so they don't remember any of those things. It was like a short circuiting of electrical activity in the brain. So when she comes back online, the phrase we used, she knows before she went offline, you are not in her face. And then if you go to like, Cece, are you okay? And you're right in her face and she comes back, that's going to frighten her. So all you got to do is put your arm around her and just kind of ride out the seizure. And when she's back, just say, hey, Cece, and then continue on with whatever you're playing. So that was number one. Number two was we talked about the treatment she was getting and how it was going to help her. We also dispelled some of the things like honest questions that a child would ask. Is Cece going to die from this? No, she's not. And so right away, that's already mitigating fear that we all could have irrational fears, but even kids, because they don't understand what's going on, they're not at that age to do so. You have to answer those questions. You have to give them a safe space to ask those questions. And so that was one of our kids that asked that right away. They almost teary-eyed, is Cece going to die? That is a great question. I'm so glad you asked. No, she's not. So, being able to just kind of take the wind out of the sails of fear by being able to have those conversations. Those are kind of some big things. So anytime that she'd be going in for treatment, we would talk about, she's going in for 10 days. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what it's doing to help her. We always gave it the spin of that. The purpose for treatment is actually not scary. It's to try to make her better, to try to make her function more, or to try to stop seizures. It was all meant for good, even though it's scary to think that our sister is leaving for a long time and we don't see her, or she comes back with her head bandaged up with this. They put these little nodes all over her head to read her brain waves, and she has to wear this for 10 days at home. And she looks, almost like a chemo patient with no hair, things like that. We tried to just kind of have those conversations. So those were big ones for those, because one of the things it did as well in sharing with them, now it's an us, I wouldn't say problem. It's an us situation as opposed to what my parents modeled. And I think one of the things we've shared about in our podcast about where we feel like there have been some missteps in our family of origin, that we understand also that sometimes our parents did the best that they could with what they had. And so I don't say
That's
that
right.
when my parents kept that stuff from me, that they were being malicious or vindictive. And I don't feel that now, nor did I feel that then, even at 18, when I asked them that question.
Absolutely.
But they did the best they can with what they had.
Right.
But all that to say, one of the things that makes me sad for them was that it then became just in us, like they had to hold on to all that weight themselves. And it's not like we're putting undue weight on burden onto our children, but we're saying we are a family. And so that means that when we want to do things together. And so we celebrate together, we grieve together, we share frustrations and successes together, but we all do it together as a family. And so, but again, all within what's appropriate for at their age as they've kind of progressed along the way and had to understand, as well as we always were open for any questions they had, because we just kind of, it made that just kind of a safe space that it's okay to have fear. It's okay to have worry. It's okay to not understand things, and it's okay to ask questions about it. Right. So those are kind of the big things that we've used throughout kind of this time. And I will say, because I know we will be running out of time, that we're in a much better place. We have her seizures under control. We've gotten lots of help over the years from things from speech therapists to all sorts of types of behavioral therapy. And our CC at age 10 is much different than she was at age 5. And it's Chris, just like our own growth. It's a process.
Yeah. Peter was just asking how old she is. She's how old now, Chris?
She's 10, going on 11.
Now. Yeah. So let me get some of these in here, because
developmentally, not that it matters, but developmentally, she's more at, the seizures have regressed her. She's more like about the age of 6.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is. It is
Thanks,
undescribable, Peter. It really is. And, I mean, I was thinking about your wife, and I'm like, what an incredible, woman she is, Chris. Incredible mom. So, but and this is really true. It's like we go on our day, but right, Chris, it's never an end for you. There is no vacation or time off in your situation, right? You never get that time off. You have to be on, right? You have
Right.
to be
There's the
on.
phrase. Yeah. You got to be
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, totally. Um, and yeah, Peter knows this well because he knows Mr. Camera Junkie really well. He has to be
Mhm.
on. He has that same thing right there, 24/7.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Camera Junkie says something awesome. But I get a lot of help from you and all my camera junkies, and he does. And Luis, when I
What
see
he's sa-
you, well, when I see him on
what he's saying
Friday,
right there
on Saturdays, yeah,
is what he's saying right there is what we've
yeah,
talked about. Is that how do you thrive in situations? What do you need?
yeah.
Community.
That's right. And he gets so much out of, and so does Peter. Peter gets so much out of his Friday nights because of us.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're with him and we love him and he loves us. And same with Luis, man.
Yeah.
When he even shared this last night, just how much he looks forward to it, how much he gets out of it. And I would imagine that gives him some gas in the tank, right? To continue,
Oh yeah.
to do the things he needs to do. And what I'm really hearing, Chris, is I'm hearing that one of the things you've been learning to do, you've had to make, a hyper vigilant kind of adjustment, and that is to be present, to be really present for CC. You've had to sacrifice, your own stuff. You've had to sacrifice more than
Sure.
what a lot of dads would because of your situation. Again, the same thing with Luis. You guys have had to sacrifice more, and you're doing it because of just who you are. You're going to do it no matter what. You're going to sacrifice all that
Yeah.
you have to. What's so amazing to me is just how what you were saying is you're helping your kids say it's okay. You're normalizing. You're normalizing for them the fear. Instead of,
Right.
instilling more fear, you're normalizing the fear by saying that's a good question. Instead of doing
Right.
what, could be, no, we don't do that. We
We
don't,
don't talk about it.
yeah, we don't talk about it. But in
Yeah.
fact you do. And so you're facing that reality, that unfortunate reality. You're facing it, and you're present. You're in it. And I just think everybody is going to be healthier for that. The dynamic is much more regulated, because of the way that you're choosing to be present in the mess. In the mess. You know what I mean, Chris? It's not.
Totally.
It's not what you expected. It's not what you hoped
Right.
for. It's not what you planned for. And
Yeah.
also, it is. And so now
Yep.
what? Right? Now what? And so, uh, Chris, this has been really awesome. I hope, everybody who's been listening to this, and I hope some people will actually get on here and watch the replay who might bump into this
Sure.
video, Chris, because every time we share, I feel more hopeful after we talk because you're proof. People like you, you're proof that we can overcome, that we can persevere,
Right.
that we don't have to be at the mercy of our fears or anxieties or uncertainties. We don't have to be at the mercy of them. They don't have to control us. We can allow them to, but that's a choice, and you've chosen not to allow that uncertainty to hijack your work as a parent, your love as a dad. You haven't allowed it to hijack you. Now you might have days where it hijacks you, like you said earlier.
Right.
You might, you're
Or
going to have those
even a
bad
few
days,
even a
right?
few seasons. One of the things I did want to touch on real quick, you had mentioned at one point, in general, yes, you had said, and you guys didn't medicate. Well, actually, we did in those early stages, in that deep grief. For us, and I think other people on Motivated Minds have shared about this as well, that we went to food in that
Okay.
in that first
Yeah.
year when she was just like, we don't know what to do for our poor daughter. Like, I
Wow.
need
Yeah.
something to cope. We both gained about 30 pounds. Like,
Wow. There you
you
go.
know, it was
Yeah.
like that, where I need something. I need an
Mm-hmm.
escape, because there
Mm-hmm.
were those nights. You're right. Now it was for a season. I'm not saying to condone that. I'm saying that
Yeah.
it still happens, and you give yourself grace to recognize
Right.
what you're
That
doing
compassion.
and
Yeah.
acknowledge it and go like,
Self-compassion.
oh my gosh, we are coping like nobody's business
Mm.
when we are going through a carton of ice cream every other day, and I'm running
Yeah.
out to get more, and we go like, why are we doing this? Well, I know why, because we
Yeah.
don't like the pain. We don't like the pain
Yeah.
right now. And so
Yeah.
this is a good
Yeah.
escape because it makes me feel good. And
Yeah.
thankfully we have community. That's part
Yes.
of why community is so important, where we could talk about these things and
That's
share and
right.
go like, I think I need to I think I need to acknowledge that I am really grieving right now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
manifesting in mint chip ice cream,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because I'm
Right.
realizing anytime that I'm
Yeah.
feeling the discomfort,
Mm.
that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
We want that
many other
reward.
things,
Yeah.
but yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
we had our low moments too, because I more just I wanted to preface that, and like I said, well, I appreciate the encouragement, and we have developed a lot of resiliency, and there were also moments where I didn't feel so resilient,
Mm. Yeah.
and you have to work through those too.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that it's clear that we are more resilient when we are doing life with others. When I reach out to somebody when I'm having a really bad day, and I have that handful of people that are deep and meaningful relationships where I can trust them, I feel safe with them. I'm not going to feel fixed, analyzed, or advised, because that's not what I'm
Yeah,
looking for. What I actually want from you is I want you to be a good listener, and I want you I just want you to be with me because I'm really struggling with this, whatever it is right now.
yeah,
And when I do that, I am better. I mean, I'm more optimized that day. I may fall into the rabbit hole, but I don't go as deep as I could because I have others that I can hold on to, and so this isn't about being codependent. This is about just doing what we were naturally designed to do. And we were really designed to be more optimized again within community. We can do life alone, but that's not optimized.
no,
I will struggle more throughout my life with things that I don't necessarily have to struggle with if I'm doing life alone. Meaning, my understanding is limited on its own. I can only figure so much out on my
yeah,
own.
yeah,
My understanding is expanded when I'm connecting with others. When I'm bouncing things off others, when I'm processing with others, when I'm sharing with others. Then and when I'm receiving from others. I mean, thank goodness, there were people in my life who were I was able to receive a lot of direction from, and that was, again, if I was left up to my own understanding, there's
yeah,
just no way I would be experiencing kind of like my territory has expanded. My territory of joy has expanded because of the value of community. So, I mean, there's no way, man, you would have been able to be as present as you are, and as you were, if it wasn't for
yeah.
that community that you surrounded yourself with, right? That's huge, man.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
big. So big, man. And I didn't know this, by the way. I got to put this up here because this is kind of well, here, maybe bring Meg in for a second. Take fear away, not by hiding, but explaining in clear communication together as family. Yeah. Right. We get rid of the fear by talking about it, right? Not by hiding
Yeah,
it with or avoiding it or sweeping it under the rug. And this is really powerful. Check this out. You know, I didn't know this, but
yeah,
he dedicated. I remember, Peter, you've shared that you've dedicated Aiden, and that you got to see him like, wow, let me put this up
yeah,
again. I want to make sure we get this. He was there to watch
yeah.
when he jumped over the car because Aiden stopped breathing, and Peter's like, he remembers freaking out, but
Huh.
you know, Lewis got right on it. He got it right on it, and he got him breathing again. Wow, man, that is amazing.
Mm.
Right? What some of you dads have really had to do, Chris, you're awesome. The ironic thing is hearing you say
Peter,
you
thank
thought you
you.
were, not a good dad. He was an amazing dad that most guys would never approach your level. You're an inspiration. You are, Chris. You're an inspiration, man. And, we've talked before about a legacy, leaving a legacy for your kids. And a moment today, I don't remember where, but I know that I saw something today that triggered a thought. And the thought was, I saw this parent who was crashing and burning, and they aren't able to they're not able to be as present as they need to be for their kids. And it's unfortunate, because I could see that child was missing out on what that child needed, like I did. I didn't get a lot of that. And still there's hope, but it just brought me like this. I was thinking about us talking tonight, and I thought, this is so neat because you as parents can make the adjustment. If you want to, you can make those hard adjustments to be present, and to suit up and show up for your kids. So you are an inspiration. Thanks, Chris, for tonight, man. Thanks for being willing.
Thank you, Carlos. Come on.
To do this.
I also want to thank you for keeping our microphones pretty symmetrical in the shot, like I love so much. Whenever we do like,
let's see, let me do this a little bit more for Chris, because I know he likes.
I'll often go, can you move your microphone a little bit so it's equally symmetrical for us on either side? They're pretty close.
Oh man!
And then we're sporting the Tombuck blue and the Keith Pelzer yellow.
Oh come on! The Keith, I got a white one, but I got the white stuff coming too. So this was so cool. Thank you, Chris. I got to do this one more time. Hang on. There it is. Okay, there it is, right there.
That's better than some of the other sounds we use in our stuff. Sometimes.
I know, right? This one, because I got this somewhere else, special for you. Everybody, if you are watching this, thanks for jumping into our chat. Cool. Thanks for watching, and Chris, again, just let's keep at it, man. We're two motivated minds, right, who are suiting up and showing up as much as we can every day. And so good. Everybody, I hope you have a awesome end to your week. I hope this was helpful to inspire and motivate you into an upcoming week, into the start, Monday, tomorrow. Let's keep reaching out. I think that's the big thing today. If we're going to persevere this week in the most effective way we can, it's going to be because we're going to utilize the connection and the support and the community, the loving, supportive community that we have, right? So let's do it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate everybody for jumping in. Mr. Camera Junkie, thank you. Peter, everybody, all you guys and gals, it's so cool that you're watching today. I think, here, wait, just before we finish up, let me just put a couple more up here that you probably see, Chris, coming in. Man, that's amazing, by the way, that story, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Luis.
There it is, buddy.
Right back at you.
And Sly, believe it or not, 20 years, you'll miss the chaos of today. Stay calm, carry on. Thank you, Sly. And you rock. You rock, Sly. I'm so glad you're here. I'm pumped. I'm ready to start the week, man. I'm feeling inspired.
There we go.
I got some gas in the tank. So Good,
because we got to record a podcast episode this week, so
I'm
putting it on I'm putting on the recording that we got to get it done.
Everybody have a great week. We will see you again next Sunday at 6 for another Psycho Ed Sunday. It's going to be cool. See you then, everybody.